You're listening to the Attempt Adventure Podcast, a podcast about finding adventure every day and making life more interesting. I am your host, Michael Desrosiers.
And I'm your co-host, James Barrett.
James, a couple weeks ago, we were talking, and halfway joking, we decided that we were just going to start calling ourselves adventurers, and we were going to fake it till we make it. Yeah, it was a joke, but the more we thought about it, the more seriously we began taking it.
Yeah, it did start out as kind of a joke, but it didn't stay that way for very long.
We were like, why can't we be adventurers?
Why not? All these other people have done it, why can't we? And we're not necessarily talking about we're going to summit Everest, or, I don't know, bike around the world, or things like that.
Right.
Those aren't really feasible adventures for the everyday person. You know, the day-to-day person is not going to climb Mount Everest as much as they may want to. I think it would be awesome. But I know I'm not physically, mentally, whatever, capable of doing so.
That doesn't mean you can't have adventure. I mean, we're not called the Adventure Podcast. We're just called Attempt Adventure, which means it's like you can fail. It's okay. Mm-hmm. But you're still along the path on your adventure, on this attempt that you're making. You're still having an interesting story to tell.
We have our catchphrase of live a more interesting life. That can mean anything. That means doing anything that you can just to have a better story to tell, to have a new experience, visit a new place, try a new food, anything.
Over the past year, during COVID, I have become an extraordinarily boring person. Mm-hmm. I've done almost nothing for a year. I hate that. I really do. So this podcast is also part accountability. You know, we're going to have monthly challenges that we're going to issue for each other. Nothing big, but just a small project to get us not even out of our comfort zone, but just getting us doing something exciting, something interesting.
I can definitely relate to that. This past year has been stressful. It's been hard. And I stopped working on my projects. I stopped trying to do things because it was just too difficult. That's not an excuse. Like, you don't need a bunch of money or a bunch of time or resources to have an adventure. I live in Dallas, and while Dallas is a big city, there's not a lot to do. It's not a place I'm sure some people, it has a lot of nightlife and things like that, but I'm not really interested in that, although that would be an adventure. Yeah. But it's things like that. It's finding little places, little spots that you didn't know existed, and being like, oh, that's neat, or just driving through a part of your city that you've never been to. There are places all over where I grew up that I've never been to.
There's a guy that we're probably going to talk quite a lot about because he was sort of our inspiration in having our conversation in the first place, Alistair Humphreys, a British adventurer. And he's done big stuff. He did bike around the world, and he's been all over to all sorts of crazy places. But nowadays, he's a dad, and he does what he calls micro-adventures, which is adventuring 5 to 9. So after work, you grab your sleeping bag, you go out, you sleep on a hill in the English countryside, make coffee, and run to work, and get back in your office the next morning at 9 o'clock. You know, finding time to squeeze in little adventures here and there in your daily routine. It's not impossible to do.
You know, I think a lot of people have this thought that they just have to hold on until their next vacation and just keep going until they can have a break. But you can have a break anytime. You know, instead of doing nothing on your day off, get in the car and drive to a new place in your town. Go to a river, go to anywhere. Just do something different. You will be amazed at how much that helps you.
I live in Bangkok, Thailand, which is, I think a lot of people would say, oh wow, that's an amazingly exciting place to live. But I'm also complacent. I've been living here for a really long time. I don't always find it exciting. Just like you in Dallas, it's kind of how it feels to me. It's just the place I live. But I've really been trying to discover new places, and there are so many resources for doing this. You can just get on Google Maps and just start browsing around and find a point of interest. When you click on one, more like that will pop up. I mean, I don't care where you live. You could live in what you feel is the most boring city in the country. You can find something weird and interesting nearby, even if it is making a 50-mile drive to the world's largest thimble. or something. That's still an adventure. It might seem silly, but it's something that maybe you haven't done before, and it's something that could be interesting. And then when you get to work on Monday morning and your friends ask, what'd you do this weekend? Instead of saying, I sat on my couch and watched Netflix, you could say, I drove to the world's largest thimble. And that's weird. You'll just automatically be a slightly more interesting person.
Like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't take much.
That's something I think we really are trying to stress here is we're not doing this with a lot of money at all.
Mm-mm.
I think it's fair to say that neither one of us have any money.
No, I am broke.
Money is not a limiting factor in adventure.
I think there's some gatekeeping almost for people that want to experience things but feel like I can't do that because I don't have money, or I don't have time. There's always a way to have new experiences.
Yeah, and that's what our monthly challenges are going to be about, pushing us to do something a little bit different. And to our listeners, we want to bring you guys along on those as well. So whenever we issue a monthly challenge, you'll have the entire month to complete it. Send us your pictures, send us an email telling us what you did, and we'll definitely talk about it at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Because this isn't just for James and me. I mean, this podcast is for anyone that wants to be an adventurer but thinks that they don't have time or money or resources or whatever.
And another thing that can really help you, if you're maybe feeling a little down, like you're not doing anything, you can find a new way to experience things you've done before.